this chalice for the light of hope, the fire of commitment, and the warmth of community.
May Sarton wrote a poem of invocation once when she invited us all to rise up and participate in the wonders of this earth and in all of its elements. Come out of the dark earth, she said. Here where the minerals glow in their stone cells deeper than seed or birth, come out of the dark earth. Come up and out into the warmth of community and connection, right now, today. Here where all the creatures of the arching sky and the fathoms deep and the embracing earth come together to honor one another in our annual celebration of the blessing of the animals. In this time, perhaps our animal companions have never had more central a place in our lives. They are increasingly the ones we turn to when we feel most alone, the ones who are there, just at the other side of our outstretched hand, to remind us that we are not alone, but each other's. Not only each other's people, but each other's beloveds, across species, across difference, across language, connected by love. And so in this service of blessing for each and every one of us, come into this circle of healing and hope. Welcome. It is so very good to be together.
Good morning. I'm Chris McCann, your Director of Religious Education for Children. I'm going to share a short reading with you today called What I Learned from My Dog. But first, I'd like to share with you something I learned from my dog just today. I very, very much wanted my dog to be part of this recording. And no enticement would do. No treats, no promises of walks, nothing. He wanted no parts of it. And so I believe that I learned today from my dog that sometimes it's more important to stay true to what you want rather than giving in to what someone else wants. And so here is our reading by an unknown author called What I Learned from My Dog. Never pass up the opportunity to go for a joyride. Allow the experience of fresh air and the wind in my face to be pure ecstasy. When loved ones come home, I will always run to greet them. Let others know when they have invaded my territory. Take naps and stretch before rising. Run, romp, and play daily. Eat with gusto and enthusiasm. Be loyal. Never pretend to be something I am not. If what I want lies buried, I will dig until I find it. When someone is having a bad day, I will be silent, sit close by, and nuzzle them gently. Thrive on attention and let people touch you. Avoid biting when a simple growl will do. On hot days, drink lots of water and lie under a shady tree. When you're happy, dance around and wag your entire body. No matter how often one is scolded, don't buy into the guilt thing and pout. Run back and make friends. Delight in the simple joy of a long walk. I wonder, what have you learned from the animals in your life? What great lessons have they taught you? Maybe they are your pets, maybe just animals that you've seen in the wild. I would love to hear from you the things that you've learned from the animals in your life.
Please join me in singing Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
We gather together each and every week with so much happening in our congregation, in our world, in our families, and in our hearts. We have so much to share about what's happening here at River Road, moving always to the joys and the concerns that are most deeply held inside our own lives. After our announcements time, when I start to share our joys and concerns, I want to encourage you, as you're able and willing, to really use the chat feature available to you on our Zoom live watch party. Tell us what's on your heart. Know that we are there for each other, that there is someone on the other side of the screen, not only reading your words, but caring about them. Let us build this connection together, just as we do every time we come together in community. There are so many things to tell you about today. Firstly, that our 10-month spiritual deepening program, Wellspring, is kicking off again this fall. What time could be better to deepen your spiritual life than now? Wellspring is an invitation to go into the depth of your understanding of how the Spirit moves in a UU context and in your own theology. The first year's curriculum explores the sources of Unitarian Universalist tradition. It'll be taught by David Banks and meet on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month in the evening. You can sign up now. There are several more spots available. Contact Beth Irakura for more questions. We are also gearing up for the kickoff of our congregational year. For over 50 years, every fall, we have gathered for the commingling of the waters in our annual water celebration service and ingathering, and so we will again this year, albeit in a somewhat different form. After our amazing and deep-hearted lay-led service on the environment and our commitments to it that will be shared next Sunday morning, we'll gather at 2:30 in the afternoon on Zoom for an info session about how our congregation is adapting to these COVID-19 days, what our programming and our ministries will look like in the fall and beyond. And immediately after that, from 3:30 to 6:30, there's a river flowing in the parking lot at River Road Unitarian Universalist Congregation. You can either walk up or drive through to participate in a safe and distanced water communion ritual in our lower lot. In the upper lot, you can drive through or walk up to receive a spiritual survival kit for you or your family that will allow you to participate in a more interactive way in our online services and touch base with your UU community every single day of the week. And up in the plaza, right in front of the main doors to our sanctuary, you can come up to receive a blessing for all those in transition as children and youth return to school, as many of us begin new jobs or start searching for new jobs, as many of us gear up for everything that lies ahead. A blessing, a survival kit, a sacred ritual. We hope you'll join us. And do remember to park off-site if you'd like to participate on foot, so that we can make space for all those who will choose to remain within the safety of their cars. We are so committed to the social justice work that grounds us and makes us who we are. And I want to encourage you again every week to check the e-weekly that'll hit your inbox to find out how you can participate in our Get Out the Vote efforts. Right now, every day, our choices matter. Please participate in the ever-changing strategy to make those votes available for everyone and make sure every vote is counted. Finally, youth programming is up and running for the fall. You'll be seeing more about our youth programming and religious education schedule soon, but it is all happening. From youth hangouts on Wednesday night to 2 different coming-of-age cohorts, the middle and high school classes on Sunday afternoons, we will be open in the digital space that allows us to connect and grow together. What a blessing it is to figure it out in community. We join with all this and with so much more, with the joys and the concerns that are on our hearts and in the world. And as you share your own, I lift up those held before the whole congregation today. Our hearts are with all those in the path of fire and storm here in this late summer season. For the winds that whipped through Iowa, leaving thousands without power and security, to the fires that continue to tear through California, leaving ash and the great effort of containment and rebuilding in their wake. For the courage to face down forces we cannot control, and the wisdom to shift our choices and our policies and our behaviors so that the flames will not keep burning forever. We offer our hope and our fervent prayer. On August 18th, we here in the United States reached the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. With 100 years of women's suffrage, we together commit to 100 more years of extending the franchise, ensuring voting rights, and working for the full and free participation in our democracy that is the right each of us is given. Fight like a girl, I say, for every right which is yours, and go down fighting for all the work that remains undone. We also lift up our own lives and struggles. Chris McCann, our religious educator for children, is blessedly home from the hospital after a scary situation with a burst appendix last week. She is working. You're probably getting her emails, and she is managing with lots of support from friends and family. We also lift up today Reverend Rebecca Savage, who grew up right here at River Road. You may remember her then as Rebecca Montgomery in the youth group, making her voice heard even then. She currently serves as senior minister of our sister congregation in Rockville, Maryland. This week, Rebecca grieves the passing of her mother, Diane Savage, herself a longtime member and friend of River Road. Our hearts are with Rebecca, with her family, and with her congregation in this time. And I hope, holding it all, that you might take a deep breath and a good seat for a word of prayer, adapted lightly from an ancient blessing St. Francis is known in the Christian and Catholic traditions as that saint among all others most connected to the creatures of this earth. And so I share with you a version of his own prayer of St. Francis, an invitation to all of us to be transformed. Lord, make me an instrument of peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Spirit, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is when everything changes that we are given the chance to begin again in love. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the sermons of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
In this time of offering, we give not because we are compelled to, not because anyone, including me, twists our arm, but because we choose to. Because giving is an expression of our values and all the ways that we give. Gifts of time, of talent, and of treasure have the chance of making a more profound impact in this time of crisis and change than perhaps they ever have before. And so I invite you to give in this moment, surely, and in every moment between now and when we gather next Sunday, to give from your heart as an expression of what matters to you, as an expression of what you love, and as an expression of what gives you hope in this world. With love and with gratitude, the offering is now freely given and freely received.
Blessings in All Directions by Donna Wallert. We look to the north and see hardy caribou, noble elk, the husky rolling in snow, the salmon struggling upstream to spawn, the deer whisking his tail with elegance.
We look to the south and watch the alligator measuring the pond, the armadillo turning his armor to the world, the wings of pelican, wood stork, heron catching the low, warm air streams.
To the west is the rim-eyed panda, the yak, the kiwi, a koala nested in the fork of a blue gum tree, the take charge kangaroo and wallaby leaping to attention, balancing the world on thick tails.
To the red earth of the east is the setting for the stately parade of giraffe, elephant, gazelle, fringed lion, svelte tiger, portly hippo, all staking a claim for their home on the continent.
We look nearer to home and glimpse the curious Persian cat, the faithful Labrador, the regal quarter horse, content goldfish, clever hamsters, the reptile appreciating friendship.
As we finish taking inventory, we send up a prayer of thanksgiving for these blessed animals who reflect all of creation and who share with us this air, this water, this dust.
Author L.R. Nost writes, "Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you." During my first year at River Road, I often preached on the Great Turning as a concept and as a period of time that we've been facing for quite some time. This turning, in a broad sense, describes this movement, this shift to a new way, a way that is equitable, sustainable, a way that is inclusive. Author Joanna Macy describes this turning as a shift from an extractive economy to a more life-sustaining model of collective living. And so as we observe our animal blessing this year, I wanted to explore the shift from dominion to stewardship. The animal blessing is one of those beautiful UU observances that reminds us so acutely that not only are we not alone on this planet, but that our values as UU support and uphold the connection between all of us. This UU tradition is derivative of the Catholic blessing of the animals on the feast of St. Francis Day. But there's honestly not that much difference between the two observances. St. Francis was known for his special connection to nature and to animals. He was also known for being socially engaged and aware. Having taken a vow of poverty, he was in a sense an advocate for the disenfranchised. This is actually a consistent pattern that we observe from many of the great humanitarians throughout history. We know that these folks, people such as Jane Goodall, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, so many others, they often did not live single-issue lives. Regardless of their flagship cause, they often upheld these sacred intersections. This glue that holds everything together. As you use, we call that glue the interdependent web of existence. So when we observe the animal blessing, it's not simply to acknowledge the very important, loving, mutually nurturing role that animals have in our lives, particularly as our pets and our companions, but to dive into our deepest values and principles through example and guidance from the natural world of which we are a part. So when we talk about the shift from dominion to stewardship, what we're really talking about is reigniting a sacred conversation that has been underway throughout all of time. And in this particular moment in history, what we're really digging into is the invitation to reset. We're also digging into that push and pull between what has always been possible and what feels more possible now more than ever. When crafting this service with the animal ministry team, someone shared Jane Goodall's words with me, and she says, "It is our disregard for nature and our disrespect of the animals that has caused this pandemic." Now, of course, there's a lot of context there that I urge you to explore more deeply. But what that quote made me want to explore was Jane Goodall herself. Her very robust career, not only of primatologist and anthropologist, but also as a humanitarian. Jane Goodall studies peace as much as she studies primates. And because she's an anthropologist, she has to study and understand something about human behavior. And that speaks volumes to me. The connection between our relationship with the planet and its resources and animals and our connection with one another as humans cannot be ignored. If we're going to dive into dominion, we have to talk about colonialism and the great disruption of that sacred connection. Colonialism serves as a force of separation between people and their culture, the land that holds them, the way in which resources are utilized. It imposes a different kind of relationship and understanding about who we are on this earth. And on this continent, after centuries of colonialism, we're each impacted by that still. whether that be our interactions with each other, our relationship to nature, the ways we treat non-human life, or what we feel we have access to. This parallels with the pandemic in so many ways. The pandemic has ramped up this great turning. It's altered our idea of access, what we're able to have, what we're able to do, who we're able to see, how we celebrate, how we mourn, how we mark time together. In fact, we're in the midst every single day of rediscovering what togetherness even means. Each of us, in many ways, every day we're making calculations about how to get our social and connection needs met. So much of our lives have been displaced to some unknown point in the future that we can only access through hope and imagination, and often we're left stitching frayed pieces of our lives together. And although we can't wipe the board clean completely and start all over, we are being invited into a deeper connection in this moment. So I want to rewind and return to St. Francis, the patron saint of animals and ecology. St. Francis was actually born to the wealthiest 1% during his time, and it wasn't until later in his life that he experienced his conversion and he took that vow of poverty I mentioned earlier. He began to live his life as a friar, and he did this because of his commitment to those who were impoverished. It was through his poverty, through his lack of worldly possessions, that he formed this sacred and special connection with nature and animals. It's often said that he would preach to the birds, believing that, in his own words, all creatures are brothers and sisters under God. It is said that his love for God overflowed to that of God's creation. I find that so precious and so wonderful. Essentially, his love strengthened him. It equipped him to show up for and care for the world that he was connected to. So if Jane Goodall teaches us that our care or lack of care for animals and the planet impacts the way that we treat one another and what happens on this earth, and if St. Francis of Assisi teaches us that it is the overflow of our love from our source which propels us and sustains our hearts to help us make deeper connections, then what does our UU faith have to teach us? Of course, we have the 7 principles, and we could hone in on that 7th principle of interdependence. It's a great one. I love it. But there is more depth there. Our 7 principles paint a beautiful picture of who we are as Unitarian Universalists, our values, what we hold as important, how we want to be and live in this world. But our principles aren't our only guidance and source. In fact, we have 6 sources of faith that provide a foundation for Unitarian Universalism. And also, in any UU space that you visit, you will probably find many different covenants. And I'm sure we'd all describe what a covenant is in our own context a little differently, but the overall meaning and purpose is to draw us into connection with each other, to provide us structure and guidance as we do our work in community and in the wider world. A covenant, at the end of the day, is about relationship. We don't have a single doctrine or creed. We don't have one path to fulfillment or wholeness. We don't have a structure that hands all revelation, proclamation, prophecy to one or a few individuals. And because of that, we really do have the opportunity to be stewards of our faith community. Of course, we're not the only ones who can claim that, but it is possible in our faith. But it comes with its challenges. The questions become, what are we responsible for? Who are we accountable to? And that is what's important about having a covenant. It's not just a set of rules or guidelines or even a contract, but rather a living document that guides us in responsibility and accountability. And therein lies the real depth of interdependence. To be in dominion means to control, to dominate, to possess. It implies a hierarchy, which implies that there's an inherent inequality. And we know that historically, dehumanizing different groups of people paved the way for horrible and ugly injustices that we are still paying the price for all of these centuries later. And we know that we apply those very rigid hierarchies to every system of life, including the natural system. It's ingrained in our cultural psyche to do that. But we have to wonder where that kind of dominion has really gotten us. We don't have to be a humanitarian like Jane Goodall. We don't have to take a vow of poverty and give away all of our possessions and preach to the birds. But what we do have to do is deal with the world on the world's terms right now. And we can find those pockets of reset in our lives. Even if it's not our entire lives, our whole lives, we can find those pockets of reset. We can do that self-exploration. We can ask ourselves, what is our relationship to non-human animals? What's our relationship to one another? What's our relationship to nature? We can pay attention to the ways our ingrained understanding of hierarchy shows up in how we consume and how we produce and what we want and what we give. We can tap into the sacred conversation that flows throughout each of us throughout time and space within and around. And it does matter. It matters how life on this planet treats other life on this planet. It matters how we treat one another. It matters how we fill up our cup with our source of spirit and life. It matters what we do with the overflow of that love. It deeply matters to be stewards of our own communities and therefore stewards of all communities. And it's okay if we don't know exactly where this great turning will lead us. But it matters that we know that we are in it. So if you are dismayed by the brokenness of this world, that is okay and understandable. Let's be in dismay with intention. Because each of us, we get to show up for this great turning. And we can do that with a willing and a ready heart. May we honor this global reset as we honor the reset within each of our hearts and minds. May we honor one another, and may we honor all of the life which sustains this wonderful planet as it sustains each of us. May it always be so. Blessed be.